I'm super excited to welcome our guest speaker, Andy Bo. He is the legend of ICB, the GOAT. So everyone give him a round of applause.
Well, hi everyone. I want everyone to just start off by closing their eyes for a quick moment. Take a deep breath in, inhale through your nose, exhale through your mouth, do it a few times, clear your mind. Congratulations, first of all, you just wrapped up an awesome semester, and you can open your eyes now. Just kind of give yourselves a pat on the back real quick. I think these types of celebrations often go by really fast, right? So just give yourselves a chance to congratulate yourself. Now, I want to have you guys imagine that you're opening up Netflix on your laptop for a moment here. And the intro goes da-da, right? And the camera starts with our heroes walking up the roads to the Capitol. And crowds of people are crying and cheering. Fireworks and flowers are lining up the street. And after ages of research and exploration, long nights, brutal battles, the Demon King has finally been defeated and the kingdom is saved, right? And the camera points to Frieren. I won't go too deep into it, but her face is emotionless to the celebrations in the first episode. The thing about her is that she's an elf, and so she's going to be living for another 1,000 years or so. And, for that reason, she sees this whole saving the world thing as just another check on her calendar. So she walks through the parade and she says goodbye to her party members, goes home, and from there, everything is pretty minute compared to the rest of the life that she's been living. Statistically speaking, this whole past 10 years that she's been on this main quest to defeat the Demon King of the world is a rounding error in her life. And so everybody's probably asking themselves, when you're watching this first episode, you're like, what's next? This is the first episode. How do you start off a show at the end of a journey? And so without spoiling too much of the rest of the show, it's a pretty gradual exploration of relationships. She goes on and starts a new journey 50 years later or so, where she talks and reflects on the relationships that she's had with other people in her party. And by the time she starts realizing the importance of these relationships, a lot of them are getting old, they're dying. It's quite melancholy. It's really, really sad, but definitely would recommend 10 out of 10 anime. And I think I want to just stop there. We'll circle back to Frieren for a bit, but I think these next 2 weeks is kind of where there's a little bit of a danger for a lot of folks here. You just finished your final presentations, awesome job. You've met your clients, whether it be online or in person, and you've done all the hard work. You've done a lot of research, you've interviewed, you've iterated, and at this point you're thinking, the semester's basically over in a couple of weeks. For some of you, can I get a show of hands who's a senior, real quick? Man, that's a good number. So a lot of you guys are probably thinking, what's next, right? College is going to be wrapping up. The quest is done, right? Your main story quest up until this point of these last 4 years is complete. And so the natural temptation, the very normal temptation is for, this past semester, for this past year, 4 years perhaps, and if anything, the last decade of your education, you're probably going to treat it similarly to how Frieren's going to treat it, which is it's just going to be another check on your calendar. A little bit celebratory. I hope you do celebrate, but for the most part, you're going to go through the ebbs and flows, and it kind of goes by you pretty quickly. And so you're asking yourself, so now what? Some of you are going to go home, perhaps not open Figma or CAD, whether it be SolidWorks, NX, I don't know what you guys use, but a lot of you might just go on and not open it for the next 3 months. Enjoy your summers. And that's totally fine. That's okay. Some of you might be going on to internships, go on to jobs, close this chapter of your life. And that's great too. I really congratulate you for getting to that point. What I'm really worried about is it's a lot more subtle, which is that many of you are going to be just thinking about this phase of your life as just checking out for a bit. You've done so much hard work, and there's so much tension that there has to be some release, which is totally okay. And when I talk about checking out, you might be thinking you have final exams. I think, next week? Is that right? So you have final exams next week. You're going to try to speed run your way all the way to the end, making sure you get all the way to graduation. You're going to be scrolling on your phone a little bit, packing your bags, wrapping up, and you might miss out on what you've been building on for the last year, 4 years or so. I sat in this very hall 2 years ago, asking that same question, right? So now what? We're in Jacobs Hall. A lot of this has been built up. So now what? First of all, I just want to introduce myself. I didn't do that earlier. My name's Andy Vo. I'm currently a design engineer at Heliux, where I operate as a one-man designer and one-man front-end developer. It's pretty hectic. We focus on manufacturing workflows, anywhere between CAD engineering to supply chain management and then assembly lines. And before that, I was formerly at Adobe, where I worked as a full-stack developer, building end-to-end agentic experiences for enterprise marketing, which is fancy for B2B GenAI SaaS. And before that, I was here at Berkeley, class of 2024, and most importantly, an ICB alum. And so I think you guys are inheriting quite a, I want to say extreme or dramatic, so now what? Because 2 years ago, around 2023, 2024, you may have seen a lot of headlines about Google or Meta or Amazon having huge layoffs. I think people's sentiment around Gen AI was overall quite optimistic. People were a little bit shy at first, but then they were like, okay, we can build a lot of cool shit with this. When you switch over nowadays, 2026, you have the lead of Anthropic, who was the former director of design at Figma, saying the design process is dead. Right? If you go on Twitter these days, which I highly recommend you don't, you're going to see a lot of flashy headlines saying AI killed Figma, Figma's dead, AI killed the designer, and that's all thanks to things like Claude Design these days. It pumps out a lot of really high fidelity UX designs, and I'm pretty sure as of last week, it also generates CAD design. So there's a solid justification for us to feel a little bit of panic as we reach graduation and then look for jobs as well. But I'm not going to really go into that today just because partly, like I mentioned, I think it's wrong. And also it's quite boring. You get so many headlines like this where it honestly just becomes noise. The reality is that design is a lifestyle, a philosophy. And it's not a tool, right? Tools come and go. When I started designing only around 5-6 years ago, I think, around COVID, and we had Sketch. I don't know if anybody here has used Sketch before. Raise the hands, anybody who's heard of Sketch? Oh, what we got a few. Okay, that's solid. We had Adobe XD. I think that was really short-lived as well. Nowadays you have Figma. I think there's this new tool called Paper. And of course we have Claude Design, right? And so what I use every single day is that in rooms that have absolutely nothing to do with design, I learned through ICB how to talk about design. How do we talk about things that are not remotely related to design, but you use the fundamentals of it, right? In ICB, we learn a lot about design fundamentals. We learn about information architecture. We learn about grids, layouts, wireframing, prototyping, user flow, how to interview, journey maps, even keyboard shortcuts, right? I love a good Shift-A in Figma where it auto-lay out everything for you. So a lot of this is very applicable, but I don't think it's really what sticks with you in the long term. When you're having conversations that have nothing to do with your users, when you're in meetings that have nothing to do with products or features, when you're even talking with friends and family, for example, you talk about, or you start asking questions about how do I design for a better path forward? How do I design for a better life? But you don't really even think about it. It's just kind of something that, as you continue to refine this, you start realizing that these are the types of conversations that build up. You can start, questioning the job or circumstances that you're in, and what they're actually for and what it's doing to you. Personally, I think it's all a muscle. It's a design muscle. And muscles require consistent training and constant reminder. And it's not some crazy light bulb switch, right? Like, we're not just gonna snap and all of a sudden we start realizing this, or it's not an enlightening realization by any means. And so it's intentionally slow. It's a lot of these discussions that we've had over the last, semester, year, couple of years or now, however long you've been in ICB, you've been training that muscle. And so I want you to think back to a conversation, a specific type of conversation you've had this semester. And this is not one where it's about like the critique sessions, it's not the design reviews. We have those all the time, right? Like almost every other day. You kind of go into your meetings and you're like, okay, what did we design this past week? Iterate. I want you to think more about the first one, which is the what are we doing? The what are we making? What are we designing? Because when you look back, it now seems so obvious. You have the mock-ups in front of you, you have the prototypes, you have the posters, right? But if you take yourself back to those first conversations with your team, you start realizing like you've been spending hours in these types of conversations. You've been spending a semester's worth, if not multiple semesters. You probably had so many of these, what are we doing? What are we making? What are we designing moments? You don't even realize how unusual it is. It is a very unusual type of conversation because most rooms in life are not going to have this conversation. Most jobs are not going to have this conversation. What I mean by that is you're going to go out there into the field and more likely than not, you're going to be spoon-fed your list of requirements. You're going to be spoon-fed your task. You're going to be spoon-fed the idea, the solution. You're going to be handed a Jira ticket one day, and it's going to list out everything. And you don't have to worry about what you have to do anymore. You don't have to think about what am I doing? What am I designing? What am I making? So what I want to say about this is that a lot of these conversations that we have in ICB, whether you think about it or not, is training you to think about listening a little bit differently, paying attention a little bit differently, right? We build the vocabulary to engage in conversations with each other about design in ways where, for the most part, a lot of people don't have the words for this type of stuff. We're training ourselves to think and use our brains and imagine at a time where our minds are most free. And at the same time, simultaneously, chaos and ambiguity are at their highest points. And so you learn to think through design. And ultimately, the deliverables almost become kind of like a side effect, right? We think of it as the peak, but at the same time, I personally see it as like a byproduct of refined imagination. So I want you to kind of walk out of here with this one notion, which is that design is not what you make of it. It's what you see that others don't. And so in a few weeks, you're going to go home. You're going to go to an internship, go to a job, wherever the summer takes you. And I would ask that you don't worry about keeping your skills sharp, right? Like I mentioned earlier, some of you might not even open up Figma or Tab. That's totally fine. So don't worry about this. When it comes to putting a rectangle on the screen or drawing a cylindrical volume or a 3D mesh, personally, I think these are kind of like you're like a one YouTube video clip away from relearning that skill. So I wouldn't worry that too much. I would think more about finding yourself in a state of boredom. Find yourself in a place of emptiness. Because I want you at this point to ponder, right? Your mind is free. You don't think about anything. You're just pondering. Imagine for a bit and ask, what now? Turn that design thinking brain on. Train the design muscle. And so you don't have to be a product designer by any means to build out and design out your life. This summer, I hope that you can find some time to block out the distractions. Put down the phone for a minute and just block out the noise, because you're going to be able to find yourself in a very uncomfortable situation, which is silence. So sit there in a very uncomfortable position of silence and know that there's, it's very ambiguous. You don't know what comes next, and get comfortable being in that situation, because that's where the design muscle is going to be strongest, which is where, all the fields of possibility are open. Someone once told me, real G's move in silence like lasagna. So I hope that just sinks in a little bit. But I want to move back to Frieren one more time. And also, I thank you for allowing me to talk about anime as a point of reference. I feel like it's not every day we get to do this. So I told you earlier that she walked through a pretty epic parade. She finished the quest, and it was completed as if it was just another thing on her to-do list. And that after 50 years, she goes on another journey. Slowly, she figures out what these relationships meant to her. And the way she figures it out is by retracing her steps. For those who've watched the anime, she goes back through the villages that she once went through. She's had conversations with the newer generation who kind of knew her party when they were children, or their children's children, perhaps. And she sits in places where the stories began. And slowly she sees it. And she's an elf, right? So she takes her sweet time. So we're not elves. We don't have 50 years to wait and go on a journey. We could do this today. We could do this week. We can do this before we fly out to home, where we go to next. Because there's something that school has taught us. For folks who are in the thick of it or are going to be graduating, school has taught us a lot of structure. We have our day-to-day routines. On Monday, we know what class we're going to. On Tuesday, Wednesday, every single day of the week for around 4 months per semester. You do that for 4 years. You do that for an entire decade from kindergarten up until now. And so school teaches you a lot of structure. And so when you're thrown into the deep end of society, the lack of structure is quite daunting. And our phones oftentimes, they just ease us in. They ease us from the pains of reality. They distract us from the fact that reality is quite simply just boredom and imagination. And so if you keep on seeking that structure, which is totally natural, I urge you to push against it. But if you keep on seeking that structure, you're going to find yourself in somebody else's definition of the world, right? You're going to find yourself in somebody's design of the world. So look around the room. These are all the people who have toiled and endured countless hours of research and exploration, long nights and brutal battles alongside you. The ones who asked, what are we even designing today? What are we even designing for this whole semester? And the ones who helped you imagine while you're busy trying to create a final prototype, as well as the slides for this presentation, on top of thinking about the exams that you're going to be studying for this week. We are not just a network of people. We're not just a group of folks that you can list on your portfolio as collaborators. We're ICB. We're Invention Core at Berkeley. We're incredibly cool builders. And what it takes to build incredibly cool things is a design muscle, right? It's to imagine. It's to converse. It's to brainstorm. And to be an incredibly cool builder is to have an incredibly cool brain. And that means training your brain. So I want you guys to walk out just thinking, design isn't what you make. It's how you see what others don't. So go out and see the world, seek boredom, and imagine. Thank you.